Listen up, adventurers and story lovers. Our saga plunges you right into the deadliest jungle in the galaxy, where one lone human dares to face monstrous beasts and even deadlier political schemes, all to become the ultimate hunter on an alien world. If you're intrigued by survival trials, intense combat, and the delicate spark of interspecies romance, then this is definitely the tale for you. Will our determined hero overcome rival clans, terrifying creatures, and the pressures of forging a groundbreaking new family line? Or will the savage world claim him before he can fulfill his destiny? Join us as the action unfolds in high-stakes battles and heartfelt moments that redefine what it means to be strong. Be sure to subscribe to the channel right now to show your support and stay tuned for more captivating stories like this one. Trust me, you won't want to miss the ending that ties it all together. Rowan Stone crouched knee-deep in the murky waters of the Garash River, senses alert, eyes scanning the dense jungle encircling him. He had been stranded on Azura's 5 for 6 days, surviving on instinct, scavenged resources, and an unyielding will to live. His short, dark beard was dotted with bits of dried mud, and his rugged shirt, torn in several places, clung to his lean, muscular frame. Sweat mingled with streaks of soil on his forehead, the combined grime serving as camouflage as he hunted for anything edible or threatening in equal measure. He had no advanced gear or weaponry. Every day was a fresh battle against both the natural environment and whatever unknown dangers lurked just beyond the curtain of trees. Like a coiled spring, Rowan tightened his core when he heard a faint rustle of leaves. Rather than flee, he submerged his body further into the cool river, angling behind a half-sunken log for cover. Only his keen eyes remained above the water's surface, tracking the source of the noise with a calm, predatory focus. Over the past week, he had transformed from a downed explorer, part of a research team that never made it to base camp, into a proficient survivalist. Azura's 5 had forced him to adapt quickly, learning to read subtle changes in the environment. The flutter of winged insects, the shift of wind through massive foliage, the unnerving silence that always presaged a large predator's approach. A flicker of motion caught his attention. A slender shape slipped through the thick fronds, partially obscured by the dappled sunlight that filtered through the treetops. Rowan remained perfectly still, channeling every ounce of stealth he had honed through his trials. Then, he saw her clearly. She was tall and agile, with pale lavender skin that shimmered whenever a stray beam of light grazed her. Cascading locks of silver-white hair tumbled over her shoulders. Her attire was minimal but practical, strips of dark cloth bound firmly around her torso and hips, leaving most of her limbs free for unencumbered movement. She carried a sleek spear tipped with an iridescent stone that glowed faintly, some advanced alien technology, he guessed. Her movements were fluid, every step deliberated, reminiscent of a big cat stalking through underbrush. There was no question in Rowan's mind. This being was a hunter, and an experienced one at that. She paused precisely where Rowan had been only moments earlier, crouching to inspect the impressions his boots had left in the wet soil. The corners of her lips curved into a faint smirk. Without warning, she spoke in crisp, accented English, her voice tinged with a lyrical cadence. "Not many can elude me for so long," she remarked, trailing a finger through the shallow footprints. "Certainly not when they arrive with nothing but the clothes on their backs." Rowan's heart hammered with cautious excitement. If this alien huntress was speaking his language, it meant she was more than just a random predator. She knew who he was, or at least what he was. Weighing his options, he decided to seize the initiative. Slowly, he emerged from behind the half-submerged log, water streaming from him in rivulets. "Perhaps you aren't quite as good as you think," he said softly, meeting her piercing gaze. The alien huntress spun around in a swift, controlled motion, brandishing her glowing spear. Her expression, however, was not one of hostility, but of fascination. Lavender eyes roamed over Rowan's form, registering every scrape and scar that told the story of his survival on Azura's 5. "You are Rowan Stone," she announced, her voice like chimes caught on a breeze. "Your name preceded you the moment we received your distress beacon. But your presence here, surviving so long, was unexpected." Rowan took a careful step onto the muddy bank, the thick clay sucking at his boots. I assume you're the reason I've been feeling watched since day 2, he asked. Or were you just waiting to see if I'd get myself killed first? He kept his posture neutral, arms relaxed at his sides, yet ready to spring into defense if she attacked. Your resourcefulness intrigued me, she replied, lowering her spear fractionally. I am Nahash Amar, chief huntress of the Kordath Proving Grounds, but your assumptions about me are incomplete. She inclined her head, a subtle gesture that suggested respect. I was not merely observing, I was evaluating. Evaluating, Rowan echoed, a single eyebrow raised. I didn't see any cameras or drones, just that damned apex predator with too many teeth every other night. Nahash nodded, her silver-white hair gleaming. The Narina panthers. They are among the more formidable species we introduced here for our trials. Yet you're standing in one piece, which speaks to your cunning. She glanced meaningfully at his battered torso. Or luck. Rowan exhaled, briefly recalling how he'd fashioned a crude spear from a broken branch to keep one of those savage beasts at bay. He had no illusions that he could have fought an entire pack, had more than one attacked at once. Even so, he knew skill had played a part in his survival. So these proving grounds, they're your people's testing arena? Nahash's lips curved into a smile that hinted at deeper secrets. Precisely. Azurus 5 isn't just any planet, it's our most challenging hunting preserve. Warriors from across the sector come here to prove themselves worthy of bearing the Kordath clan's prestigious insignia. Few outsiders survive the first day without advanced gear, yet you've lasted nearly a week. And you did so, she tilted her head thoughtfully, without leaving a trail of destruction in your wake. He noted the pride in her tone mixed with open curiosity. So what happens now that I've inadvertently passed this test? In response, Nahash stepped closer, bridging some of the space between them. The air almost crackled with tension. You have earned the right to be acknowledged, she said simply. And more than that, those who survive the Kordath Proving Grounds are customarily offered membership among our galaxy's elite hunters. She paused, gaze sweeping over Rowan's shoulders. But you, Rowan Stone, have caught my personal attention as well. Rowan's eyes narrowed, measuring her words. What exactly does that mean? A flicker of amusement crossed Nahash's face. You may consider it a courtship invitation, among other things. My people hold that superior qualities, like your adaptability, must be carried forward. We do not lightly let such potential slip away. Rowan felt a tingle of surprise twist through him. A courtship invitation? You're saying because I survived, you want me to? He let the unfinished question hang between them. Nahash lifted one elegant shoulder in a slight shrug. Pass on those extraordinary genes, yes. For the Kordath, prowess in the field is the highest measure of attraction. It is how we preserve and strengthen our lineage. But don't misunderstand, she added, voice softening. This is a privilege, not a casual contract. We choose carefully. He studied her more intently now. There was an undeniable allure in her lithe movements, her fierce intelligence, the way her predatory grace seemed balanced by genuine warmth. Yet something in her stance suggested deeper conflict, as though she too was testing the waters of trust. Where I come from, he said, we usually start with simpler steps. Share a meal, exchange a few stories, see if we drive each other crazy. Nahash let out a crystalline laugh, stepping even closer. And if we find we enjoy each other's company, we proceed to the stage where we slay a beast together, yes? She arched a delicate brow, revealing a playful glint in her eyes. Rowan suppressed a smirk. Slaying beasts usually comes before dessert on Azurus 5, I take it? Sometimes, she said, equally amused. But there's more at stake here. My station as chief huntress comes with responsibilities. The Kordath leadership has recognized your unmatched survival skills. I, in turn, can offer you acceptance into our culture, valuable knowledge of the stars, and access to the best hunting grounds beyond anything Earth has known. He shifted slightly, aware of the gritty sensation of dried mud on his skin and how it contrasted with Nahash's poised elegance. You talk like membership in the Kordath is a high honor, he said. But if I'm being evaluated for fathering future Kordath hunters, that's a big step, especially since I haven't even left this jungle alive. Yet. Nahash regarded him, admiration visible in the set of her jaw. That you joke about not leaving here alive was testament to your bravery, she noted. But humor aside, I understand your caution. We Kordath do not force reproduction. We choose partners who impress us. Still, a champion who endures our trials is rare, and we prize such rarity. Before Rowan could respond, a distant roar broke the stillness, sending birds shrieking skyward. Nahash spun, spear at the ready. That, she said tersely, was a Kordath-engineered predator called a Torgash. They patrol these grounds, but rarely in broad daylight. Rowan went on alert immediately. Sounds like the day just got more interesting. Nahash nodded. Indeed, and if these Torgash beasts are venturing so close, something or someone may be guiding them. Azura's 5 is not a place of random happenstance. The Kordath often guards secrets we don't wish outside factions to exploit. Guess it's time to see if I'm worth all that admiration, Rowan said, crouching to scan the perimeter of the tree line. Consider it part of our first dance, Nahash replied, her voice brimming with excitement. Protecting one's partner is the first step of courtship on my world. A second roar echoed, this one closer. Rowan felt his adrenaline spike, the primal survival instincts he had refined over the past days igniting once more. Without needing to consult Nahash, he shifted into a readied stance, scanning for vantage points. He spotted a fallen tree trunk that would serve as partial cover, as well as a wide stump that might give them higher ground if needed. Nahash nodded approvingly at his quick assessment. You adapt swiftly, Rowan Stone. If you're to hold your ground in a true Kordath hunt, you'll need a weapon. She reached behind her and produced a short blade, its surface gleaming with the same violently pulsing energy as her spear. Take it, she offered. Consider this my second gift. Catching the blade by its hilt, Rowan recognized quality craftsmanship. The blade was perfectly balanced, its handle snug in his grip. Appreciate it, he said, testing the weapon's heft. Much better than the sharpened sticks I've been making. Nahash allowed herself a momentary smile. Our forging techniques are quite advanced, but do not rely solely on the blade. You have a mind for strategy and a body honed by your environment. That synergy is your real advantage. A branch snapped in the dense undergrowth. Then a Torgash lumbered into view, a hulking quadruped with muscular limbs and a ridged back, each ridge glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns. Its elongated snout curled back to reveal curved fangs that shimmered with residual energy, likely the result of the Kordath's genetic enhancements. Nahash lowered her spear, adopting a defensive posture. They rarely travel alone, she muttered, eyes sweeping the clearing. Rowan nodded, his pulse steady. Despite the swirl of new revelations about courtship and genetics, he was firmly back in a zone he understood. Immediate danger, an opponent to outmaneuver. He squared his shoulders. So what's the usual plan? Bait it, flank it, or run? Before Nahash could answer, two more Torgash charged from the left, effectively surrounding them. Their guttural snarls reverberated through the steamy air, each beast shifting to herd Rowan and Nahash into a confined space near the riverbank. Nahash hissed in annoyance. Something's orchestrating this. They never coordinate like that unless they're being guided. Rowan, brandishing the short blade, made a quick pivot to position himself back-to-back with Nahash. Any theories? He asked, scanning the circle of beasts. Rival clans, she replied darkly. Some resent my rise to chief huntress and would sabotage me by any means necessary. If they control these Torgash, they want me dead, or at the very least, publicly humiliated. Well, that's a comforting thought, Rowan said dryly. The Torgash advanced, muscles quivering with suppressed aggression. He felt Nahash's presence at his back, an odd but welcome reassurance. Keep moving, she advised, her voice low yet commanding. They'll charge the moment we show a gap in our defense. If we can disable the control devices, and I sense they must have them, these creatures might break off the attack. Rowan grinned despite the tension. So just like that, you want me to locate and slice through some hidden technology while we dodge glowing fangs? That's precisely the plan, Nahash said, and there was the thrill of the hunt glowing in her eyes. Impress me again, Rowan Stone. The first Torgash lunged, jaws snapping in a wide arc. Nahash and Rowan simultaneously dove to opposite sides, each performing a swift roll that brought them out of the beast's path. The monstrous predator skidded on all fours, churning up mud and sending droplets of swampy water flying. Wasting no time, the second Torgash snarled and bounded toward Rowan. Instinct flared. Rowan feinted left, then twisted right, staying just beyond reach of the beast's slashing claws. He could almost feel the electric current pulsing along its ridges, a sign of the genetic modifications inflicted upon these creatures. His newly acquired short blade flashed in the dappled light as he slashed at the Torgash's shoulder. The cut was shallow, but enough to make the creature roar in pain and momentarily back off. Nahash fought with a dancer's grace, spear humming with an undercurrent of alien energy. She sidestepped at Torgash's snapping jaws, then struck with fluid precision. The spear's tip glowed brighter upon contact, delivering a shock that caused the beast to recoil. "Rowan," she yelled, "their weak spot is just under the chin. Aim for the cluster of nerves. If you see a device attached there, sever it." Easier said than done, Rowan thought, as his Torgash opponent circled back for another swipe. The creature was massive, easily outweighing him by a few hundred pounds. Its breathing was ragged and angry. Spotting a glint of metal under the beast's throat, he realized that Nahash was right. There was some kind of apparatus embedded in the thick hide. If he could just maneuver beneath its snapping fangs. Rowan sidestepped, slashing lightly at the Torgash's flank to draw it forward. A flash of insight told him to wait until it lunged, as overextended attacks could be exploited. When the creature finally committed, he ducked under the lethal arc of teeth, sliding onto one knee. In one swift motion, he plunged the blade upward, slicing through the small metallic box. Sparks erupted in a shower of greenish light. The Torgash howled, rearing back. Its eyes seemed to lose focus, aggression momentarily giving way to confusion. Without the artificial compulsion of the control device, it bellowed once more before turning, leaping away into the underbrush. Across the clearing, Nahash did the same with her spear. Spotting a device on her adversary's thick neck, she jammed the weapon's tip into the junction, severing wires in a single pulse. That Torgash, too, let out a keening wail and crashed through the surrounding vegetation in a panicked retreat. The third Torgash, recognizing the abrupt shift, hesitated. It snarled at Rowan and Nahash as if uncertain whether to continue the fight. Then it spun and vanished into the gloom, leaving the pair breathing heavily but triumphant. Rowan stood, wiping sweat and dirt from his brow. "I don't know if that's considered a normal day in your part of the galaxy, but I'm ready for a vacation." Nahash smirked. "You'll get no respite yet. Whoever forced those Torgash to attack is likely nearby. I'd prefer a more private courtship, but it seems we have business to handle first." They surveyed the aftermath, noting the deep gouges in the earth and the crushed vegetation where the Torgash had retreated. "I'd guess the controllers are somewhere with a vantage point," Rowan said, trying to recall the topography. "High ground or perhaps concealed behind the thickest part of the jungle." Nahash rested her spear against one shoulder, scanning the tree line with narrowed eyes. "Not far from here, the old Kordath outpost stands. It was once used for remote monitoring of the proving grounds before we switched to advanced scanning satellites. If a rival clan hopes to sabotage my reputation, that's the perfect place to do it." Rowan nodded, recalling a moss-laden stone structure he had glimpsed during his survival trek. He had avoided it at the time, suspecting it might be home to more lethal inhabitants. "So we head there?" he asked. "Yes," Nahash confirmed, "but we should be prepared for more than just Torgash. If this truly is the work of a rival clan, they won't risk confronting me openly. They'll set traps, plant watchers, and possibly test your abilities further." She paused, a wry grin forming. "I hope you're not tired of proving yourself yet." A short, humorless laugh escaped him. "Guess I'm still in the audition phase. Fine by me. I enjoyed giving a good performance." Nahash acknowledged that remark with a nod and broke into a fluid run, indicating for Rowan to keep pace. Despite hours of combat, the chief huntress moved with untiring elegance, her footfalls near silent on the jungle floor. Rowan followed, relying on instincts honed through a relentless week of survival. Though battered and sore, he found new strength in the exhilarating sense of partnership. The jungle canopy thickened overhead, blotting out patches of sunlight and plunging them into a greenish twilight. Massive vines draped from towering trees, swaying gently with the wind. In the distance, bright bursts of color revealed clusters of phosphorescent flowers that glowed even in daytime, an exotic hallmark of Azura's Five. The environment was harsh but breathtaking, and Rowan briefly marveled that he had gone from a reluctant castaway to an integral piece in an alien civilization's puzzle. An hour later, they arrived at a dilapidated facility partly reclaimed by nature. Thick roots twisted around cracked walls, and creepers dangled from rusted beams. A faint mechanical hum emanated from within, suggesting that some dormant systems had been reactivated. Nahash placed a hand on Rowan's arm, signaling him to stop. "Listen," she whispered. "Voices." Sure enough, hushed tones carried on the still air. Rowan glanced around the entrance, noticing a flicker of movement through a broken window. At least 3 forms, maybe more. Armed, possibly, he tightened his grip on the short blade, while Nahash readied her spear. "We confront them," she said, "but remain cautious. I suspect Kelroth, the patriarch of a rival faction, is involved. He's been clamoring for my removal from Chief Huntress duties for months, claiming our traditions have become corrupted. If he learns I'm here with a human," her lips pursed, "let's just say it might get heated." Rowan nodded, heartbeat picking up at the promise of fresh conflict. "Then let's surprise them before they can think of unleashing more Torgash." They advanced in a synchronized manner, creeping along the facility's outer wall. The structure's original purpose was clear from its design: squared corridors meeting at right angles, open courtyards for equipment or small craft. Now, everything was blanketed in vines and cracked from years of disuse. Yet pockets of technology still blinked, courtesy of the saboteurs who had taken up residence. At the first side entrance, a pair of alien sentinels dressed in lightweight armor milled about, exchanging quiet banter. Their skin bore the distinctive sapphire hue and ridged forehead plates that marked them as part of the Dvorin clan, a lesser-known group rumored to be in league with Kelroth. Nahash motioned for Rowan to circle around. Rowan nodded, stepping lightly to avoid brittle debris underfoot. The short blade felt reassuring in his hand. His thoughts briefly drifted to Earth. If his old commanding officer had seen him now, sneaking up on an alien sentinel in a ruined outpost, he'd question Rowan's sanity. Then again, Rowan had always been a bit of a risk-taker. Nahash took position behind a collapsed segment of wall, waiting for Rowan's signal. Exchanging silent gestures honed in the jungle, they launched their attack in seamless tandem. Nahash vaulted over the rubble, spear crackling with azure energy. She caught one guard square in the torso, discharging a stun pulse that dropped him instantly. Simultaneously, Rowan darted from his cover, blade aimed at the second guard. The sentinel managed a panicked shout before Rowan swept his legs out from under him. He pinned the alien's arm beneath his knee, pressing the blade to the guard's throat. "Not another sound," Rowan hissed, eyes flicking toward Nahash to ensure the first guard was incapacitated. With calculated efficiency, Nahash tore a strip of cloth from the stunned alien's gear and used it to bind his wrists. Rowan did the same with the second guard, who lay stunned but conscious, breathing heavily, and eyeing Rowan in a mix of fear and disbelief. Nahash crouched beside him, her spear tip hovering near his face. "Kelroth," she said simply, voice low and dangerous. "Where is he?" The guard swallowed audibly. "In the main chamber," he choked out, glaring resentfully. "He's not alone." Nahash leaned in, her lavender skin seeming to glow in the dim corridor. "Then let's hope he's smart enough to see the folly of angering the Chief Huntress." They moved deeper into the complex, stepping over tumbled columns and thick tangles of vine. Rowan could feel a charge in the air, part adrenaline, part the presence of humming alien power sources. As they drew closer to the central chamber, snippets of conversation grew louder. "If we can't kill her into the field, we'll discredit her," boomed a voice that Rowan guessed belonged to Kelroth. "We'll say she fraternizes with an outworlder. She mocks our traditions. Once the council sees what she's done, they'll remove her title." Rowan winced at the mention of outworlder. Clearly, he was the problem. He glanced at Nahash, whose eyes were narrowed with steely resolve. "He underestimates me," she muttered, "and he underestimates you." Stepping forward, they prepared to confront the voices. a confrontation that would shape both the future of Nahash's leadership and Rowan's role in the Kordath clan. The time for stealth had ended. It was time to stand as allies, or possibly as something even more profound. Rowan and Nahash slipped through the crumbling corridor, hearts pounding in synchronized anticipation. The voices grew louder as they neared a large, semicircular chamber whose walls still held vestiges of ancient Kordath inscriptions. Slivers of faint light cut through ruptured sections in the ceiling, illuminating patches of moss and reflective metal fixtures that had once housed sophisticated monitoring gear. Striding into this makeshift command center was Kelroth himself, a broad-shouldered, cobalt-skinned figure adorned with angular tattoos marking him as a high-ranking member of a rival Kordath faction. 4 subordinates stood at attention, each armed with a short energy spear or shock blade. Kelroth's speech was cut short the moment he spotted Nahash, his expression morphing from self-assured arrogance to barely contained fury. "Chief Huntress," he sneered, his deep voice echoing off the ruined walls. "How fortunate you've delivered yourself to us." His icy gaze flicked to Rowan, registering surprise that this mud-streaked human stood at Nahash's side, armed and evidently capable. Nahash's grip tightened around her own spear, the tip still faintly crackling from its recent use. "Kelrath," she said icily, "you've been meddling into the proving grounds once again, controlling Torgash beasts, sending them to attack me and my guest." Her pause before naming Rowan as more than guest was subtle, yet everyone could sense she meant something deeper. "That violates every tenet of our laws." In response, Kelroth let out a short, barking laugh. "Laws that you, Nahash Amar, have trampled by elevating an outsider to the level of a true Kordath hunter." He waved a dismissive hand, and his followers shifted in place, ready for a potential fight. "You may bear the title of Chief Huntress, but many of us question your leadership. First, you rise above more traditional candidates in our clan, clearly with the Council's favor, and now you parade a human through our sacred trials." Rowan exchanged a tense look with Nahash. He recognized this moment as a political showdown wrapped in personal vendettas. "If by parade you mean I survived a lethal jungle without so much as a canteen," he said, voice laced with dry humor, "then yes, it's been quite the parade. Some of your genetically manipulated beasts nearly took my head off." Kelrath scoffed, stepping forward. "Surviving is one thing. Being worthy of standing beside our chief huntress in a courtship ritual is quite another. Human." His emphasis on the last word dripped with scorn. "You have no place in our lineage. Introducing your kind into our gene pool is sacrilege to the traditions established by the old hunts." Nahash's jaw tightened, but her eyes betrayed a spark of defiance and pride. "Our traditions were not intended to stagnate," she shot back. "They exist to ensure each generation grows stronger. If Rowan Stone can endure our deadliest lands and best our apex creatures, I consider that proof enough of his worth." Kelroth's hands curled into fists. "Then prove it openly," he snarled. "Invoke the right of challenge and let us see if this alien truly deserves a place among the Kordath. If he fails, you forfeit both your position and your right to choose your mate." A hush fell across the chamber, punctuated only by the low hum of ancient machinery reactivated by Kelrath's group. Rowan's grip on his short blade remained tight, his mind racing through possible outcomes. He'd already fought genetically enhanced predators. The idea of a one-on-one challenge against an alien champion didn't exactly fill him with glee, but he couldn't deny a spark of excitement at the prospect. Nahash shot Rowan a concerned glance. "Be careful," she whispered, so only he could hear. Then to Kelrath she replied, "You demand the right of challenge, a duel to prove or disprove this union's legitimacy?" Kelrath's lips twisted into a cruel grin. "Precisely. Either your human strength meets our highest expectations in the traditional combat forms, or you will be forced to relinquish your role. We will claim the right to preserve the Kordath bloodline through a mate of our choosing, one untainted by alien interference." Rowan felt a rare flicker of anger ignite in his chest. He might have been an outsider, but the idea of Nahash being coerced in such a manner set his teeth on edge. Straightening, he locked eyes with Kelrath. "I accept," he said firmly before Nahash could protest, "but we'll have clear terms. If I win, you publicly acknowledge Nahash's decision and sign an oath, one witnessed by the entire Kordath Council, that you will never challenge her authority again. A ripple of astonishment passed through the chamber, even among Kelrath's own ranks. Nahash's eyes widened. Rowan had effectively preempted any stalling tactics. Kelrath's expression briefly faltered, as though he hadn't expected the human to be so assertive. Very well, he agreed, voice taut. My champion will face you at moonrise in the ancient stone arena, the cradle of Kordath tradition. Nahash inhaled slowly, turning to Rowan with a mixture of apprehension and admiration. Despite her calm facade, Rowan sensed the gravity of this confrontation. If he lost, it wasn't just his life on the line. Nahash would be bound to some rival champion, possibly forced to abandon everything she'd worked to achieve. The tension of that possibility coiled in his gut like a serpent. Kelrath snapped his fingers at his subordinates. We're leaving, he declared. Pack up the control modules. There's no further need for them. Let the beasts roam. They've served their purpose. As if to underscore his self-assuredness, he cast one final mocking smile at Nahash. I hope your confidence in this human doesn't disappoint you in the end. Once Kelrath and his entourage had vacated the chamber, Nahash released a long breath. The hum of machinery settled into a softer drone as systems powered down, leaving the space feeling even more desolate. That was reckless, she said to Rowan, though her tone held more admiration than reprimand. He could have forced terms that left you no chance. Rowan shrugged, body still brimming with residual adrenaline. Better to agree on the spot than let him orchestrate more sneaky attacks. Besides, if the Kordath value raw skill, I'll just have to show them what a determined human can do. Nahash searched his face, a warmth blooming in her lavender eyes. We have until moonrise, she said softly, to prepare you, but the rite of challenge is not merely a fight. It reflects courtship, our mating dance in combative form. The outcome will determine both my standing and our future. They left the ancient outpost behind, traversing Azura's Five's thick jungle with renewed urgency. Nahash guided Rowan to a secluded clearing near a towering waterfall that fed into the Garash River. The roar of cascading water provided a natural veil, ensuring they wouldn't be overheard or interrupted. Bioluminescent vines draped from tall trees, creating an almost mystical atmosphere as the sun dipped lower in the sky. After ensuring the clearing was free of hostile creatures, Nahash turned to Rowan. The rite of challenge is steeped in Kordath tradition, she began, gesturing for him to stand opposite her. What you saw during our confrontation with the Torgash, those movements, the flows of attack and defense, only scratched the surface. Our ceremonial combat is also a symbolic courtship. Each strike and parry holds meaning. Rowan nodded, already recalling how Nahash's spear strikes held a certain rhythmic beauty, almost as if she danced while fighting. So it's like a language in motion, he ventured, stepping closer. Yes, Nahash said approvingly. Every form, every stance communicates either dominance, invitation, acceptance, or rejection. Like lyrics to a song only our people understand. To win, you must not only defeat your opponent physically, but also demonstrate perfect mastery of these symbolic gestures. If you flail like an amateur, the council will see it as an insult to our heritage, even if you manage to overpower Kelrath's champion. Rowan's mind flashed back to his basic martial arts training in Earth. Though the fundamentals helped him survive, he knew it wouldn't be enough. Show me, he said, voice steady. I learned fast. Nahash spared a brief, proud smile. I know you do, but be warned. Some parts of this are intimate. In the final movements, we replicate the motions of a potential mating dance. It's designed to prove not just physical prowess, but compatibility. If the champion claims victory during those motions, it cements his right to mate with the chief huntress. Hence, the stakes are far more than a simple trophy. Heat rose to Rowan's cheeks, though he forced a calm demeanor. I'm trying not to let that part cloud my focus. Nahash lifted her spear in a fluid arc. We have little time, so watch closely. She began demonstrating the traditional stances, feet positioned in a slight outward angle, shoulder square, spear angled in a graceful half-moon sweep. Each transition flowed seamlessly into the next, reminding Rowan of a carefully choreographed dance performance. Rowan observed, then imitated. Their first attempts were clumsy at best. He was used to Earth combat styles that prized direct efficiency. The Kordath forms, by contrast, balance elegance with lethal precision. Yet by the fifth or sixth repetition, he began to grasp the underlying rhythms. Nahash nodded approvingly, stepping in to correct the tilt of his hip, the angle of his arm. Each contact of her hand against his body sparked a subdued current of anticipation. Beneath the urgent purpose of training, a tension simmered between them, a magnetic pull that neither openly acknowledged, but both felt. The final step, Nahash explained softly, is the moment of decisive submission or dominance. When you land it, you must do so in a way that respects our forms, but also asserts your victory. If you do it right, the entire council will see your worth. Rowan exhaled, holding her gaze. No pressure, then. They practiced well past dusk, the overhead sky transitioning from molten orange to deep indigo. Firefly-like insects hovered around the waterfall, their collective glow providing faint illumination. At last, Nahash signaled a halt, breathing heavily from the prolonged exertion. Rowan's shirt, what remained of it, hung in tatters, soaked with perspiration. His lungs burned, but he was exhilarated. "So," he said, gulping air, "how badly am I mangling your tradition?" A soft laugh escaped Nahash, and she tapped the butt of her spear against the ground. "You're adapting quicker than any of our people might have expected," she admitted. "Your footwork still needs refinement, particularly in the culminating moves, but your grasp of the forms is remarkable for a single evening's training." They stepped to the water's edge, letting the cool mist from the falls swirl around them. Nahash knelt, scooping a handful of the cascading water to wash the grime from her arms and face. Rowan did the same, relishing the cool relief against his sweat-streaked skin. After a few moments of silence, Nahash spoke, her voice quieter than before. "Rowan, if you succeed in this challenge, and I believe you will, know that you're not only securing your own survival, you're shaping the future of the Kordath. My leadership has faced skepticism before, but the idea of selecting a human mate has emboldened some of my rivals to openly question me." Rowan turned to her, droplets of water rolling down his jawline. "But if I win, they can't say anything else, right?" She offered a half smile. "Exactly. A victory in the right of challenge, performed flawlessly, would prove that our bond strengthens rather than dilutes the Kordath lineage. It would silence Kelrath and others like him for a generation at least." She paused, eyes drifting momentarily away. "But if you lose, they'll force me to relinquish my title, and I'd be bound to produce heirs with whoever Kelrath designates." The weight of that prospect settled between them. Instinctively, Rowan reached out, brushing a stray lock of silver-white hair from Nahash's forehead. "I won't let that happen," he promised, voice firm. "If for no other reason than I can't stand the sight of that pompous blowhard grinning over his victory." Nahash tilted her head, an appreciative light in her eyes. "You speak with the conviction of a Kordath hunter." Then after a brief pause, she added, "And Rowan, though this began as a matter of evaluating your genes, I hope you realize my admiration isn't merely professional. You've shown heart, intelligence, and courage. Qualities my people value, but which I value even more personally." Rowan felt a surge of warmth. "For what it's worth," he said, voice husky, "I'm not doing this out of obligation. Meeting you changed everything I assumed about this place, and about what I want, going forward." Nahash's gaze flicked to his lips, the hush of the waterfall intensifying the moment. Then she leaned forward, pressing her mouth to his in a brief, electricity-tinged kiss. It was less about passion and more a promise, a silent vow, sealed in moonlit water droplets. "Come," she murmured, pulling back. "We need rest before the challenge. Tomorrow night will define our future, or end it." The following day passed in a blur of hurried final preparations. Nahash dispatched a trusted messenger to summon official witnesses from the Kordath Council, ensuring the right of challenge would be observed by the highest authority. Word spread quickly through the clan networks on Azura's 5, and by late afternoon, small groups of onlookers began gathering near the ancient stone arena, a massive amphitheater carved from natural rock formations, ringed by towering pillars etched with prehistoric symbols. Rowan and Nahash arrived at twilight. The wide, circular space was illuminated by floating orbs of bioluminescent crystal that hovered around the perimeter. Spectators formed a wide circle, leaving the central dais open for the combatants. Towering monoliths stood like silent guardians, etched with the histories of past champions. Staring at the monumental structure, Rowan felt a flicker of awe. He'd grown accustomed to the jungle's dangers, but this setting was charged with an almost sacred energy. Glancing around, he recognized no small measure of skepticism in the eyes of certain onlookers. He also spotted curiosity and even excitement from others. A hush fell when Kelroth appeared at the opposite entrance, accompanied by a tall Kordath male whose muscular physique was accentuated by ceremonial armor. "This is Everus," Kelroth announced loudly, placing a hand on the champion's shoulder. "He has bested every warrior in our faction. Tonight he shall demonstrate to all why an outsider cannot claim the right to father children with our chief huntress." Nahash stood at Rowan's side, shoulders squared. She remained regal in posture, garbed in a flowing dark cloak that she would soon discard to reveal traditional combat attire. With a nod from her, one of the council elders, a wizened female whose face bore the swirling tattoos of her station, stepped forward. "Let the rite of challenge begin," proclaimed the elder, voice carrying in the acoustics of the ancient arena. Champions step forth and assume the initial stance of recognition. Rowan swallowed hard, recalling Nahash's meticulous tutoring. He peeled away his makeshift tunic, revealing the ceremonial symbols Nahash had painted on his skin. Swirls and lines denoting skill, adaptability, and the nascent bond between them. Ivorus similarly stripped off his outer robe, showing off chiseled arms and a broad chest adorned with complex clan markings. Stepping into the circle, Rowan mirrored Ivorus, dropping into the opening posture Nahash had taught him. Feet slightly apart, arms raised at a specific angle, blade held in a grip that signified challenge yet respect. Across from him, Ivorus performed the precise Kordath stance, though there was a sneer on his lips. "The combat will continue until submission or unconsciousness," the elder declared. "Death is permitted, though not encouraged." She paused, letting the heavy implications settle. Should the human prevail in both skill and form, Kelroth must forfeit all claims against the chief huntress. Should Everus triumph, the union is invalidated. Rowan steadied his breathing, the hush of the crowd descending like a heavy curtain. This was it. Every step Nahash had taught him, every motion he'd painstakingly rehearsed, would determine not only his fate, but hers. "Begin," the elder's voice boomed. Everus lunged first, spear glimmering with a charged tip. The rite had commenced. Rowan pivoted smoothly, letting Ivorus's initial thrust pass harmlessly by. Remembering Nahash's words, "Each movement must be a conversation," he responded with a controlled slash that forced Everus to sidestep. The entire crowd, from outer clansmen to council elders, watched intently, evaluating not just who landed blows, but also how faithfully each adhered to the ceremonial forms. Everus switched stances, gliding into a routine known among the Kordath as the assertive ascension. Rowan recalled that it was a pattern meant to display dominance and corner the opponent. He quickly mirrored a defensive dance step, deflecting the spear with a graceful sweep of his short blade, then countering with a forward pivot that symbolized mutual acknowledgement. A wave of murmurs rippled through the spectators. Everus's expression contorted, as though he couldn't believe this human knew the fundamental sequences. Growing bolder, he unleashed a flurry of strikes, each meticulously aligned with Kordath tradition, but executed at blistering speed. Sparks flew as Rowan's blade and Everus's spear tip clashed again and again. For a heart-pounding minute, Rowan wrestled purely with defense. Yet he recognized that he couldn't simply block and dodge. The rite demanded he show his own measure of aggression. "Invitation," Nahash had said. On Everus's next thrust, Rowan slid sideways with feline grace, capitalizing on the spear's overextension. Then he spun, incorporating an earth-based leg sweep that seamlessly blended into the Kordath footwork. Ivorus toppled for a moment, but quickly caught his balance. In the stands, Kelroth visibly stiffened, his face a storm of indignation. Nahash, meanwhile, wore a calm but intense gaze, poised on the edge of the circle in silent support. Rowan advanced, performing a series of arcs and feints that he and Nahash had painstakingly practiced. He recognized the culminating pattern approaching. The final measure, known as the ultimate unison, which ended in a posture that simulated the pinning of a mate. It was the symbolic claim of victory and union all at once. Avarice must have realized the same, for he roared, surging with renewed ferocity. He aimed a potentially lethal blow at Rowan's chest, electricity sparking along the spear's head. Summoning every ounce of focus, Rowan danced into the strike rather than away. The sudden proximity threw Everus off balance, and in that flash of disorientation, Rowan locked arms with him, twisting to leverage the champion's momentum. The crowd gasped as Iverus's feet left the ground. Rowan completed the spin, guiding the champion's body downward in a controlled arc. They landed in the finishing posture. Averus on his back, arm pinned, Rowan's blade pressed lightly to his opponent's throat. Silence. Even the wildlife seemed to hush in that suspended instant. Rowan held the stance, ensuring it was picture perfect, exactly how Nahash had demonstrated. Then with a measured breath, he eased the blade aside, allowing Iverus to catch air. Averus coughed, glaring up at Rowan with equal parts shock and grudging respect. You dare use our final mating posture against me? He spat, but his words carried no real heat. The entire ring of onlookers knew he had been bested. In the hush that followed, the elder's voice resonated. The human Rowan Stone has prevailed in combat and form. A thunderous round of voices erupted. Some cheered, celebrating the spectacle of the near-perfect execution of Kordath tradition by an outsider. Others grumbled or fell silent, clearly displeased that Averus, the champion of a rival faction, had been defeated. Nahash stepped forward, radiant with pride, and offered Rowan her hand. He took it, helping Averus to his feet as well in a gesture of sportsmanship rarely seen in such rites. The elder moved to the center of the arena, beckoning Kelrath to approach. The rival clan leader did so with evident reluctance etched across his face. Kelrath, the elder intoned, the rite is concluded. Rowan Stone has upheld both the physical and ceremonial requirements. According to our laws, you must honor your terms. A ripple of tension passed through the crowd as Kelrath's gaze flicked from Nahash to Rowan. For a heartbeat, it seemed he might lash out, refuse, or find some manipulative loophole. But the entire council, a dozen or more Kordath elders, stood witness. With visible bitterness, Kelrath bowed his head. I, Kelrath of the Razak faction, formally relinquish all claims against Chief Huntress Nahash Amar, he said through gritted teeth. Henceforth, our clan recognizes the union she chooses, even if it includes an outworlder. The elder nodded. Let it be recorded for all time, she declared, and may the Kordath flourish under strong leadership, unburdened by internal treachery. With that pronouncement, the crowd broke into open celebration. Drums and low-pitched horns sounded, echoing across the ancient monoliths. Bioluminescent patterns danced along the pillars, reacting to the collective surge of excitement. Striding away from Kelrath's baleful stare, Rowan found Nahash's hand once more. She pulled him into a fierce embrace, ignoring any watchers who might deem the act too personal. You did it, she murmured against his ear, voice shaking with relief and elation. You won, and you did so with a level of skill that will be talked about for generations. Rowan, catching his breath, smiled. Well, I had an excellent teacher. Besides, the look on Iverus's face was worth every bruise. They were soon joined by several council members, offering congratulations. One elder extended a small obsidian pendant shaped like a stylized spearhead. A gift, he said, in recognition of your successful integration into our ways. Wear it as an honored Kordath huntsman. A fleeting wave of disbelief washed over Rowan. Just days ago, he'd been stranded and left for dead in a jungle. Now he was effectively recognized as an elite hunter, with the potential to form a union with the chief huntress herself. Amidst the swirl of well-wishers, Nahash grasped Rowan's hand and gently led him away, weaving through the throng until they reached a passage that opened onto a platform at the arena's edge. Now that the challenge is settled, she said, there's another ceremony you must be part of. The blessing of our union. It is the official step that confirms our bond in the eyes of the clan and the council. Rowan felt a knot of nerves in his stomach twist into something more profound. Standing there, dusk giving way to night, in spectacular streaks of color, he realized that the battle in the arena was only the beginning. "What does this ceremony entail?" he asked softly, lacing his fingers with Nahash's. Her eyes glowed with excitement and something deeper, an affection that had grown in the short, intense time they'd spent together. "In the Temple of Latari, beneath the ancient crystals that measure our life force, we'll stand before the clan. Their blessing acknowledges that our genetic union is both physically and spiritually sound. It's also the moment we—" She paused, letting the unspoken possibility of conception linger. "That we formally decide to share our futures, our legacies." Thunderous cheers from the main arena drifted in the background. But in this quieter corner, Rowan felt the weight and wonder of her words. "Then let's not keep the clan waiting," he said, squeezing her hand. They left the ancient stone arena under a canopy of swirling lights and resonant chants, heading toward the Temple of Litari, and toward a destiny neither could have imagined just days before. A resonant hum filled the upper galleries of the Temple of Litari, a structure older than any other site on Azurus V. Arches of polished, iridescent stone soared high above, forming a dome that refracted the light from dozens of hanging crystals. Each crystal pulsed with a gentle glow, collectively producing a prismatic display on the temple's floors and walls. Within this sacred place, two wide rows of watchers, council members, prominent hunters, and curious onlookers, stood in patient reverence, awaiting the moment Rowan and Nahash would step before the Elder Circle. Still wearing the ceremonial marks from the challenge, Rowan walked side by side with Nahash, hands clasped. Though a hush had fallen among the assembled Kordath, a sense of keen anticipation permeated the air. The moment they passed through the colossal entryway, the crystal's luminosity shifted, intensifying around them. From the corner of his eye, Rowan noticed how many sets of alien eyes were locked onto him, some in awe, others in lingering skepticism. At the temple's heart lay a central dais surrounded by a shallow moat of shimmering water. Bioluminescent plant life thrived in that water, trailing delicate fronds that undulated with a gentle, rhythmic cadence. The dais itself contained carved symbols, presumably older than any living Kordath's memory. These designs spoke of mythic hunts, the forging of alliances, and the venerable rites that maintained the clan's strength. Nahash paused at the water's edge. Following tradition, they each removed their boots before stepping onto the dais. She led Rowan carefully across a carved stone bridge, no wider than a single person's stride, an intentional design to evoke humility in those seeking the temple's blessings. At the dais' center stood three elders in distinctive robes, each with swirling tattoos that mapped the lineage and achievements of their storied lives. Rowan took a steadying breath. In truth, he found this moment far more daunting than the formal duel. Fighting an opponent was straightforward, rely on skill, reflexes, and strategy. But proving oneself worthy in a centuries-old spiritual and genetic blessing, that felt like stepping onto an entirely new battleground, one laced with intangible expectations. The lead elder, her hair braided with shimmering ribbons, raised a hand. In response, the crystals overhead emitted a dulcet chime. "Nahash Amar, chief huntress, and Rowan Stone, victorious challenger," she began, her voice echoing in the temple's perfect acoustics. "We gather in witness of your union blessing, whereby the Kordath clan acknowledges your shared bond and potential for new life. Let it be known that from this day forth, your synergy shall either fortify our lineage or alter its course forever." An assistant stepped forward with a slender, open-ended circlet carved from the same obsidian-like material as Rowan's newly bestowed pendant. Another assistant carried a small bowl of glimmering liquid. The elder dipped her fingers into the liquid and traced a luminescent pattern across the circlet's surface, then set it upon Nahash's head. At once, the circle of watchers erupted into hushed exclamations as the obsidian bands shimmered and locked into place, signifying her ongoing leadership and new status as a bonded mate. Turning to Rowan, the elder gestured for him to kneel. He followed suit, feeling the cool stone against his knees. She touched the luminescent fluid to his forehead, forming symbolic lines to match the markings on Nahash's circlet. "Under the crystals of Litari," the elder declared, "you share your essences. Let the temple judge your harmony." A collective breath hung in the air as the crystals overhead began pulsing in unison. The swirl of colors shifted, fanning out like a living aurora. Each beam converged on the dais, bathing Rowan and Nahash in a multicolored halo. A strange warmth blossomed in Rowan's core, an odd but not unpleasant sensation that seemed to expand with each heartbeat. Nahash's eyes were half-lidded, her posture still and reverent. Beneath the sheen of her lavender skin, faint patterns of light moved, an outward manifestation of the temple's resonant energy. Instinctively, Rowan reached for her hand, fingers intertwining with hers. The moment they touched, a sharper surge of warmth raced up his arm and across his chest, like an electric current without the sting. A murmured commotion rippled through the watchers. The crystal's radiance had intensified, sending arcs of shimmering brilliance around the chamber. The elder who had anointed them watched closely, her expression straddling awe and measured composure. "Your synergy is extraordinary," she stated, her voice tinged with surprise. "Rarely has the Temple of Latari responded so powerfully. It suggests a union of potent significance." Rowan swallowed, feeling as though his every nerve ending was alive with energy. The temple's light dance reached its crescendo, casting elaborate patterns on the surrounding walls. Spirals and waves that the gathered Kordath recognized as symbolic of strong genetic pairing. Some in the audience openly gasped. Others sank to their knees in a gesture of reverence. Abruptly, the brilliance ebbed. The crystals returned to their earlier, muted glow, leaving Rowan and Nahash gazing at one another in the afterglow. A lingering warmth persisted wherever their bodies touched. Though spent from the intensity, Rowan felt a new awareness anchoring him, some deeper closeness to Nahash that went beyond mere attraction or respect. "The Temple of Latari has given its verdict," announced the elder, her voice echoing with finality. "Your union is not only approved, it holds potential for a mighty legacy. May the Kordath's future be forever changed by this joining of bloodlines." In the resulting swell of murmurs, Nahash guided Rowan up from his kneeling position. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead lightly to his, a tender contact that symbolized mutual acceptance. Cheering broke out among segments of the crowd, while others stood struck with silent awe. Kelroth was nowhere in sight, and if he maintained any private objection, it could no longer be voiced after such a public and resounding endorsement. A handful of council elders approached, offering slender vessels of ceremonial nectar. One by one they congratulated the new pair, placing their hands over Rowan's heart or Nahash's in gestures of blessing. Even Avarice, Kelroth's defeated champion, stepped forward, offering a curt nod of respect. "You fight with a style we have never seen," he said quietly to Rowan. "Perhaps the Kordath can learn from you, even as you learn from us." Nahash exhaled, her hand still clasping Rowan's as they stood amidst the swirl of celebration. Though the crisis of the rivalry had ended, both sensed that a far larger journey was unfolding, the forging of a bridge between two species, one step at a time. 3 months passed in a swift cascade of events that reshaped the landscape of Azura's 5 and beyond. Under Nahash's reinvigorated leadership, the Kordath Council began openly discussing alliances with Earth. Scholars who once shunned the idea of alien interference now clamored to study Rowan's unique genetics. The possibility that humankind might bring new adaptive traits to the Kordath was a topic of fascination among the more scientifically inclined. During this period, Rowan and Nahash took up residence in the High Huntress Pavilion, a structure perched atop a wide plateau overlooking the Garish River. Each morning, the two would rise early to oversee the training regimens of young hunters. Nahash introduced Rowan's Earth-based techniques, fundamentals of martial arts in wilderness survival, into the curriculum. Soon, it wasn't uncommon to see Kordath recruits practicing stances reminiscent of Rowan's final moves in the Rite of Challenge. Their curiosity was contagious, and Rowan found himself instructing entire classes in hybrid forms that merged Earth's pragmatism with Kordath's elegance. A particular day arrived when Nahash called an impromptu gathering of clan leaders on the pavilion's main terrace. Early sunlight bathed the gathering in gold, as about a dozen influential figures, once critical of any outsider union, bowed politely upon approach. Rowan sensed a shift in the clan's attitude. They no longer eyed him with suspicion. Rather, many seemed excited, even eager, to glean fresh insights. Midway through the discussion, Nahash signaled for quiet. She placed a hand on her abdomen, a gesture Rowan recognized. Of late, she had been experiencing a flurry of unusual symptoms, heightened senses, fluctuating energy levels, and vivid dreams. She met Rowan's gaze across the pavilion, her lavender eyes shining. "My people," Nahash began, voice carrying effortlessly. "I have news that affects not only our clan, but the entire Kordath legacy. I am with children to be precise. The temple healers confirm I carry twins." A ripple of surprise and delight spread through the assembly, accompanied by a chorus of whispered exclamations. "Such a dual pregnancy is rare among us," she continued, her voice trembling with cautious excitement. "And the preliminary scans show they carry a powerful blend of Kordath and human genetic markers." Rowan felt a jolt, his pulse pounding at the confirmation. Though he had suspected, hearing Nahash speak it aloud made the reality sink in. Across the gathering, reactions spanned a range of emotions. Several older council members exhaled in wonderment. Younger hunters exchanged excited grins at the implications. Others appeared thoughtful, as though they were recalculating the future of their lineage in real time. Huskar, one of the more analytically minded elders, stepped forward. "Chief Huntress Rowan Stone," he said, bowing respectfully, "you have our deepest congratulations. This event is unprecedented. Our medics and scientists will offer whatever counsel you need for the health of mother and children. But also know that the council may have 1,000 questions. We hope you will indulge us." Nahash inclined her head, a fond smile gracing her features. "Your support is welcome. We stand on the threshold of a significant evolution in Kordath history." She glanced toward Rowan, her expression reflecting both joy and resolve. "And we do not take this responsibility lightly." From that moment on, the daily hum of clan politics intertwined with the extraordinary prospect of a hybrid birth. The temple healers set up a dedicated wing for Nahash's prenatal care, threading together advanced Kordath bioscanners and newly introduced Earth medical technology, courtesy of Rowan's supply links. Even Kelroth's most ardent supporters could find no ground to oppose the unprecedented cooperation. The potential breakthroughs in genetic science were simply too remarkable to dismiss. The twin pregnancy progressed quickly, an effect that had the healers simultaneously amazed and concerned. At just 2 months, Nahash's belly began to show a gentle curve. By the 3rd month, she had grown noticeably more radiant, her skin occasionally flickering with subtle luminescent patterns whenever she felt the twins shift. Rowan often placed a hand there, marveling at the fluttering movements beneath his palm. Each sensation was a vivid reminder of how far his life had pivoted. Once a lone survivor in a hostile jungle, now a prospective father to half Kordath offspring. Despite the relative calm, not all were at ease. In hushed corners of the clan's strongholds, rumors persisted, whispers that Kelroth still harbored resentment, that some factions doubted the twins' true viability, or even that a second challenge might be invoked if the children did not meet certain standards. Nahash addressed such mutterings in a public forum, standing confidently before skeptics. "Nature will judge our children's worth, as it does all. There is no right to question a newborn." In response, a swirl of volunteers, hunters, scholars, and scientists rallied around the chief huntress and her mate, forming a protective and inquisitive circle. The clan's leading geneticist, Dosia, emerged as a key figure. She presented weekly updates, her data consistently showing that the hybrid twins exhibited accelerated growth and strong physiological markers, especially for adaptability, an attribute valued by both species. One day, while Rowan was leading a mixed group of Kordath warriors and Earth visitors through a demonstration of survival tactics, a young messenger sprinted across the training yard. "Chief Huntress, request Rowan Stone," the messenger panted. "She's in the Temple Healer's ward. It's urgent." A spike of alarm shot through Rowan. Dropping the practice spear he'd been wielding, he broke into a run, the pounding of his feet matching the hammer of his heart. When he arrived, he found Nahash reclined on a cushioned bench, an anxious group of medics surrounding her. She lifted her gaze at his entrance, relief flashing across her features. "I'm fine," she reassured him, "but the children are growing remarkably fast. The healers say we may be expecting them earlier than we thought." Her expression was a mix of bewilderment and excitement. "Much earlier." Standing among the softly whirring monitors, Dacia cleared her throat. Chief Huntress Rowan Stone, the twins' advanced genetic makeup has escalated their development. If this trend continues, we estimate a gestation of approximately 5 to 6 Earth months total, rather than 9. The implication left Rowan momentarily speechless. Drawing closer, he clasped Nahash's hand in his. So, we're going to be parents much sooner than any of us anticipated? Nahash nodded, placing her free hand over her abdomen where the twins stirred. Yes, she said, managing a small, slightly breathless laugh. I hope we're ready. In the following weeks, the Temple Healers Ward became a hotbed of innovation and interdisciplinary cooperation. Under Dacia's supervision, Cordath medics collaborated with 3 Earth specialists who arrived via the newly secured diplomatic shuttle route. Together, they formed a joint medical team that addressed every aspect of Nahash's unusual pregnancy, from nutrient intake and rest cycles to the unique psychic resonances the twins seemed to emit. Rowan, juggling training sessions and ongoing diplomatic liaisons, spent every spare moment with Nahash. Their private quarters in the High Huntress Pavilion were reconfigured to accommodate healing equipment and comfort enhancements, soft floors for relaxation, ambient lighting that ebbed and flowed with Nahash's vital signs, and climate controls to keep the space at a consistent temperature that suited her. Meanwhile, news of the hybrid pregnancy rippled through the galaxy, piquing curiosity in far-flung regions. Alien delegates from allied civilizations dispatched envoys to observe or offer congratulatory tokens. Each gift or message further underscored the magnitude of these unborn children, who were now seen as potential catalysts for bridging cultural and genetic gaps. Though the atmosphere brimmed with excitement, there were quiet moments of doubt. Nahash confided in Rowan late one evening, her head resting on his shoulder as they reclined on a padded couch. I can't help but think of the day I found you in that river, she mused softly, stroking his hand. You looked so determined, yet so alone. Neither of us could have predicted this, leading a new era, carrying children that might surpass every Cordath record. Rowan kissed her temple in a gesture of reassurance. Life can change in an instant, he said, remembering vividly how he'd once worried only about his next meal or surviving another predator's ambush. Now it's about creating something bigger than ourselves, forging a family, forging alliances. Sometimes I wake up still half expecting to be sleeping under a makeshift lean-to in the jungle. A faint chuckle escaped Nahash. You and me both. She gently guided his hand to her rounded belly. Their twins responded to the contact, pressing outward in a synchronized motion that made both parents exhale in astonished delight. They're so active, Nahash whispered, eyes brimming with emotion. That's a good sign, right? Rowan asked, though his voice was tinged with lingering anxiety. It is, she replied firmly. Dacia says it indicates strong development. And who knows, maybe they're practicing for the hunts they'll undertake one day. Before Rowan could respond, a telepathic whisper, faint yet distinct, brushed the edge of his mind. Startled, he met Nahash's gaze. Did you feel that? He asked. She nodded, an astonished smile spreading across her face. Yes, she said, voice trembling with wonder. It felt like a greeting. It dawned on them both that the twins, not yet born, were already exhibiting telepathic potential. The realization thickened the air with awe. Whatever else might happen, these children were poised to change the destinies of 2 species and quite possibly the entire sector. When Nahash entered her final week of gestation, just 5 months after their union, the entire clan prepared for the birth as if gearing up for a grand festival. Decorations of flowing banners and symbols, honoring fertility and renewal, adorned the walkways leading to the Temple of Latari. Craftsmen carved intricate effigies depicting hybrid creatures, symbolizing the hope that these children would embody the strengths of both worlds. Musicians rehearsed daily, practicing the solemn but uplifting melodies designated for this historic occasion. On the eve of Nahash's expected labor, the temple's crystals shimmered with heightened intensity. Many believed it was a sign the twins were about to make their arrival. Rowan stood at Nahash's side in a private chamber of the healer's ward, his concern barely masked by an outward calm. The medics moved briskly, prepping salves, monitors, and every piece of technology or herbal remedy they thought might be needed. A hush fell over the corridor when Nahash's contractions began. The temple's keepers ushered the curious away, allowing only the essential healers, Nahash's trusted aides, Wushami and Rowan Amon, to remain. She was led into a spacious birthing suite lined with soft, glowing mosaic tiles. Ancient Kordath texts inscribed above the doorway declared this chamber a place of sacred transitions, where new life joined the tapestry of the clan's legacy. Rowan felt every fiber of his being on edge. As much as he'd endured physical challenges, nothing had prepared him for the emotional intensity of childbirth, especially an interspecies one with unique, uncharted complications. Nahash, though clearly in pain, wore a resolute expression, her gaze fixated on the end goal. In between deep, measured breaths, she squeezed Rowan's hand. "It's happening," she murmured, face contorting briefly before she regained control. All those old Kordath proverbs about strength and motherhood, I never truly appreciated them until now. Rowan swallowed hard, brushing sweat-dampened hair from her brow. "You've survived apex predators and hostile rival clans," he reminded her with a tentative smile, trying to keep her spirits lifted. "You can handle this." Nahash let out a strained chuckle, then gave a curt nod. "We can handle this." Time seemed to stretch as the birth process intensified. Healers guided Nahash with calm, rhythmic instructions, breathing, focusing, calling upon the clan's spiritual tradition for endurance. Rowan provided constant support, wiping her brow, offering quiet words of encouragement, and preparing for any last-minute complication. All the while, the surrounding tiles slowly brightened, reacting to the building life force in the room. When the moment finally arrived, a new set of cries pierced the air, a sound raw and vibrant, echoing off the mosaic walls. It was their firstborn child, delivered into gentle hands. For a few heartbeats, Nahash lay there, chest heaving, as the medics carefully cleaned the tiny infant. Then came the second cry, lighter in tone but no less forceful. Two squalling voices reverberated, their pitch resonating in the luminous crystals overhead. A crescendo of energy pulsed through the chamber. Rowan's heart thundered as he cast his gaze on his newborn children, the first time he'd truly laid eyes on them. In that instant, every trial, every fear, and every hope converged in a burst of pure awe. A collective gasp and tremor of wonder swept through the watchers. Twin hybrids, a boy and a girl, both displaying traits from each parent. The boy had predominantly lavender-hued skin with subtle human undertones around his cheeks, while a tuft of dark hair promised the texture of Rowan's own. The girl bore skin leaning a shade closer to Rowan's, but laced with faint Kordath luminescence, her wisps of white hair hinting at her mother's heritage. Their eyes, still adjusting to the world, glowed with an uncanny awareness that seemed almost preternatural. Nahash, despite her evident exhaustion, reached out to hold them in turn. Her face glistened with both tears and perspiration, a fierce maternal pride shining through. Rowan hovered close, scarcely breathing, afraid any sound might disrupt the profound moment. One by one, the healers checked the twins' vitals, each more astonished than the last at their robust signs of health and unique biometric readings. With delicate care, the medics placed each infant in Nahash's arms, then gestured for Rowan to join. He eased himself onto the low seat beside her, hardly able to form coherent words. The twins, meanwhile, emitted soft, gurgling noises, almost as though testing out the range of their brand-new voices. Telepathic flickers danced through Rowan's mind again, gentle touches of awareness that seemed to confirm what the medics had theorized. These children were born with a telepathic link, sensing emotions and forming attachments at an accelerated rate. Surrounded by the subtle glow of the mosaic chamber, they introduced names chosen from both Kordath tradition and Earth influences. "Raylon Stone," Nahash announced, tapping the little boy's nose with infinite tenderness. "And Ilia Amar," she added, brushing a strand of luminous hair from her daughter's forehead. Those gathered repeated the names in hushed reverence, almost like a prayer of welcome. Outside, word of the successful birth spread through the entire stronghold, then on to distant corners of Azura's Five. Celebratory horns blared in the plazas, and members of different clans formed spontaneous gatherings to toast the new life. Even factions once opposed to Nahash found themselves curious, if not outright thrilled. After all, these twins, with their unprecedented genetic makeup, might herald a new epoch of interspecies understanding. As the initial flurry of medical checks concluded, the keepers guided mother and children into a more private recovery space. Rowan remained at Nahash's side, arms protectively around her and the newborns, absorbing the magnitude of what had just transpired. Everywhere he looked, he saw evidence of the merged heritage. Raylan's faintly glowing scalp ridges, Alia's soft skin tinted with Cordath luminescence, and both children's uncanny mental presence. Nahash caught his eye, a gentle smile shaping her weary features. "You once said you never expected to end up on Azura's 5, she murmured. "Now look at what we've made here." A wave of gratitude washed over Rowan. "My entire life changed the moment you decided a human might be worth following," he said, leaning in to kiss her brow. "And I'd do it all again. Every Torgash encounter, every duel, every moment lost in the jungle, just to be here now." In the quiet that followed, Raylan and Alia settled into their first contented sleep, snug in their parents' embrace. The faint gleam of the mosaic tiles reflected on their peaceful faces, hinting at the bright and uncharted future ahead. Whether training in the rigorous hunts of Azura's 5 or forming new alliances across star systems, Rowan knew their family had become a beacon of possibility. In that moment, all he could feel was a fierce, overwhelming love, an emotion that transcended species, tradition, and the vast distances of space. From my own perspective, this story encapsulates the best elements of courage, love, and growth. We witnessed Rowan evolve from a lone survivor to a respected figure among an alien race, and we followed Nahash as she led her people through challenges that tested tradition. Together, they proved that cooperation, especially in the face of adversity, can pave the way for a brighter future. Their newborn twins represent not only a bond between two species, but the promise of even greater alliances and discoveries ahead. In the end, it's a testament to how shared determination and respect can bridge gaps once thought impossible. I've found real inspiration in this journey, and I hope you do too. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What moved you most? And how do you think their future might unfold? Share your opinions, and let's keep the conversation alive.